Give us free.
Pearl Peak Radio,
Oh,
where we
y'all
give you a perfect image of
motherfuckers
life, and we are everyday
see.
people. Like to welcome you all to the show. Today we have a special guest, Brother Enoch with the Hip Hop Detox. Live with us today on Pearl Peak Radio. Brother Enoch, welcome to the show.
Amen. Peace and love, my brothers. Glad for the invitation. Thankful for the invitation and the brotherhood.
Yes, sir. Now we have OG Alex, myself, Pan African Moore, which is a panel. And the reason why we have the panel is we're coming from the mindset of scientists, mathematicians, and analytical thinking to where we all will have a panel to look at a situation, to dissect that situation, and then come with a solution that's good for not only ourselves, but good for our people and humanity as a whole. Right. So let me present the problem, and then I'll take you further into the show after I present the problem, and then we're gonna utilize hip hop detox and the things that you do to solve this particular dynamic, right? Okay, so now this is the problem, and we all know we getting ready to go into Black History Month, so we tied it all together today. All right, here we go now. All right, now look, this is dealing with the death of Sandra Bland, right? And we know that story, but I'll read it. Sandra Ned Bland was a 28-year-old African American woman who was found hanged in a jail cell in Waller County, Texas on July 13, 2015, 3 days after being arrested during a traffic stop. Officials found her death to be a suicide, but story goes that she was hung. Right. Now, this is the problem we're dealing with, right? This is the problem. Sandra Bland's bail was set at $5,000 following her arrest in July 2015, right? To be released, she needed to pay a 500 fee, 10% of the total amount to a bondsman. She was unable to secure this amount before her death in a Waller County, Texas jail cell where she was found 3 days after her arrest, right? And the bond amount, $5,000, and the required 500. She's arrested for a minor traffic violation, which escalated, right? She going back and forth with the sheriff. She wound up unalive, right? Following her death, her family reached a 1.9 million settlement in a wrongful debt suit, right? Okay. Now, this is where we finna get into, right? And this is the crutch of this show. And I gotta pull this up. But the problem is she couldn't raise $500 in 3 days. Right?
That's horrible.
She called family members. And within that time span, she was unalive. Right? So we dealing that mentalities and mindsets, right? You can't call a family member, hey, I got 50, I got 75, I got 100, hold on, I got 200 as a unit to save a family member's life that's behind bars in a racist town.
Yeah,
that's a problem, right?
That's
so
horrible.
Now we're getting into the crux of this show, right? Dealing with hip hop detox, right? Because Brother Enoch deals with the mind of the youth, right? Because you have to raise the youth up with a certain mentality to understand life, to understand how to build, to understand the importance of family so they can grow to avoid a mindset to where you don't have capital to save a loved one, right? So let's get into it. So it says in school and after school programs, holistic human development, right? The SEL, brother, like SEL stands for
social and emotional learning.
Okay. Now, how does that benefit, and can you go into social and emotional learning? Because I never heard the part of emotional learning.
Well, listening to what you started off with, let me preface this by putting this in front of everybody. This may sound like something you're familiar with, but this is also a hypothesis. And we know that when you're dealing with solving problems, you're always going to have a thesis, and you're going to have an antithesis, and the goal is to find a synthesis in between both so that you can solve a problem. So I want to start off by saying this. In the name of the Almighty Creator of the heavens and earth, I bear witness that regardless to land, label, or language, there's one source, one creator, one originator. And I bear witness in all the great worthies that have come in the great line of divine. I don't make any distinction in any of them because we don't do religious gang banging. We don't do
Come on.
spiritual gang banging. We're not doing organizational gang banging. We are thankful for all of our ancestors, all the wise women and men that have ever come to do good for us as a people, and also those who have come to do good for humanity in general. I give thanks and honor, recognizing that the spirit, mind, emotion, and body of those who were kidnapped and brought over here into this area that has become known as North America and the Americas, and those who are already here, the indigenous people, the original people already living in this area that was found here and that was conquered. What I'm about to say inculcates the history and the psychology of what has transpired so that we understand that we don't go anywhere without standing on the shoulders of those who have done good for us, whether we know them or know them not. And we all recognize that since we have 8 billion people, they say, on the planet Earth, we all are links on a chain. And so when we start talking about holistic human development that leads to how we utilize what's called social emotional learning, the idea in its essence is recognizing our humanity while embracing our divinity. We do that in a variety of ways, but the SEL or social emotional learning is all about recognizing the need, especially in this day and time where people are not able to put into language how they feel. Thus,
Yes.
we have slangs where we'll say to each other, "You feel me? Such and such and such. Do you feel me?" We're asking questions about, "Can you feel me?" Because we can't really articulate how we feel. So when you learn how to communicate how you're feeling and what you're feeling, it gives you not only a sense of awareness, but it's the opportunity to become a master of those things so you can rise above emotions so that you can get into higher level mathematical thinking and reason. So there's more than three different ways of looking at social emotional learning, but the awareness of emotions, the management of emotions, the ability to be able to solve problems, conflicts, and issues where you don't allow for those emotions to make you go pull out your blicky and you want to now go hit somebody because they stepped on your toe, they took your parking space. You know, it allows for you to begin to think before you act because thought precedes the action. Yet, if you don't know the processes by which you activate those powers that you have within, then it becomes more of a norm for people to crash out. So the SEL is geared for that purpose. And we started doing SEL back in, under the name, I would say, SEL back in 2006. We were doing the work in 2002, and we had administrators from schools who communicated to us that what we were doing was being called social emotional learning, even though we went into the schools utilizing different languages. And so we were, it was recommended that we began learning from an organization called Castle, which is the organization that's known to be the leading social emotional learning organization, if you will, in the country.
Well said, brother. I
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the occult is dealing with the subconscious. So it's the programming of the subconscious, if you just want to simplify it, so to speak. So, anything dealing with repetition, symbols, trauma, major moments can attribute to that programming when it comes to whoever the target is. So, yeah, of course.
Okay, that makes sense. On OG Alex, you got anything to add as we go further in?
I wanted to ask a question about the SEL programs. It's like, do you see a lot of what's the results like on the dynamics between the age groups? I know, like I'm looking on here and it says from 3 to 12, and I can remember growing up, and at a certain age, you pick up a lot of things real fast. With your program, how does the dynamics with that based on the young adult, I say adolescent 12 versus someone 7 or 8? How do y'all deal with that part of it?
Well, actually, I would say that the age range it has decreased in terms of the starting point because 9-year-olds usually you look at third graders being about around that age. However, with the last generation, especially being given iPads and cell phones in the cradle, they're becoming quite acquainted with a lot of poison at very young ages. And it's messing up just the regular way the brain is supposed to be wired. It's interfering with just the regular way, the normal way that a child should be developed mentally. So when you start talking about the neurological problems of young people, and you start talking
Right.
about a 6-year-old who's zombie scrolling, spending hours upon hours on TikTok, instead of them playing with puzzles, playing with clay, playing with cars, doing things with their hands, it's causing problems already. So when you start talking about attention deficit disorder or any of the things that comes up that people begin saying young people are dealing with, well, instead of it being third, fourth, and fifth grade, now you're seeing kindergarten, first graders. You're seeing younger and younger children that are now displaying behaviors that you would see older ages. And I can honestly say that way before the shutdown, I think probably as early as 2011, 2012, we started getting requests for us to do programming that normally would go toward the intermediate or middle school, or junior high, as we, call it, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, maybe 9th grade. But now we started getting, at that time, we started getting third grade requests to deal with some of the behaviors that the older children were exhibiting at one time. Now you got the primary grades that are exhibiting those behaviors. So when it comes to pro-social behavior, when it comes to resiliency and grit, when it comes to being able to differentiate between that which is supposed to be engaged in a school setting and having enough discernment, even at that age, to understand what's appropriate to do in front of adults and what's not. Years ago, there were certain things many of us who are over the age of 30, you wouldn't do in front of an adult because you knew that was off limits. That wasn't something that you would demonstrate. You would go around the corner. You would do that kind of thing when no adults are around. Not today. You get things that are being done right in the face of adults. And it's unfortunate because, it goes beyond just one level of misunderstandings and us not being trained in the home. SEL is assessing one aspect of it, but as you can see, you can't look at that and not look at the trauma informed aspect because you're dealing with trauma on all levels, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically with the young people. But then you can't leave out the fact that the parents or those who gave birth to them, they need social emotional learning. They need trauma informed care. They need to understand self care in a way to help them to be balanced. But then you can't leave out the professionals who work with these young people because many of them have children and many of them are experiencing the same things that young people are experiencing. So you have a lot of healing that's needed. And that's why we look at it from a holistic human development perspective where you can't leave out all those different dynamics. Because once you leave them out, open yourself up to the undoing of whatever work that you're doing that's good. But the 6-7 hours you may do, you may have a young person a week. They have to now go back home. They got to go back on the block, and they have much more time to undo whatever it is that you just did. So now you have to figure out how can we work collectively together so it's not one organization, one person, or one group trying to deal with the whole scope of what it is that we have to deal with, just to help ourselves first, help our families, and help our people.
Exactly, because I like how the fact that you gather their attention when they're in front of you, which gives them an opportunity for their minds to open up to receive a message, right? Then you have others who would have to come in while that mind is ready to receive this knowledge to show them how they're getting played. Example, the person who owns the funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they don't want to see the killing stop because they're making money. The bail bondsman, keep it going. They making money. The guy that got to come out in the street and clean out the blood that's been spilled on the concrete, they making money at our demise. So it's saying if you got pride in yourself, right, stop letting them win off you, right, out of you acting out of your lower nature, right? Now, another thing that I like that you guys do that's also included in Hip Hop Detox, because what was the hotline of the phone that was going on at that time? What was that? Say again, brother.
Talking about the hotline number?
Yes, sir. Where the artist would be on and we would discuss music.
Oh, okay. In terms of just the business of music or the business of entertainment you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
See,
well, go ahead.
No, so see that's important because you have arts up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know in music how low vibratory frequencies used to help zombify the mind, right? But they do that for their benefit as well because they say that hey, majority of the record sales of quote unquote gangster rap is white suburban kids.
Mm-hmm.
So that white suburban kids are saying, hey, I'll spend my dollars, but I want you talking about y'all killing each other. Call your women, you know, the B and the whole word. We that's what we want. And that's what we'll pay for. But then at the end of the day, it's still getting played.
Ironically enough, I know I'm gonna go back a little bit, so you brothers may laugh a little bit at this, but I grew up on NWA and Public Enemy and Too Short, Big Daddy Kane, KRS-One, all those different artists that came from the different perspectives of hip hop, and that was the blessing of being able to see a variety. You could see a Kid and Play. You can see a Kwame, you can see a Special Ed, and then you go right into the X-Clans, and you go right into those who had more consciousness in what they were communicating. But then you had the Above the Law, you had the Humpty Hump, and Digital Underground when Tupac was a dancer. You had a wide range of expression in hip hop, and that's not even to negate the fact that when I was in elementary school, I was loving hearing the message by Grandmaster Flash and Billy Mail. I was loving hearing the music that people were breakdancing to. So I think that what we have to always recognize is that we live in a society that weaponizes everything.
Right.
When I say everything, they weaponize everything. So whether we're talking about governmental forces, whether we're talking about corporations, whether we're talking about foreign corporations, we're looking at a well-engineered reality, a well-programmed reality that's backfiring. I'll never forget going on a college campus, and I heard some white students, Caucasian students, talking about how much they love Public Enemy, how much they love Professor Griff, how much they love Chuck D. And then at that time, there was a concert, a tour going on, and Ice Cube had a group. They had a song called Buck the Devil. I don't know if y'all remember that group.
Lynch Mob.
The Lynch Mob. I was going to see, I was a little trivia to see who remembers that. But they had a group called the Lynch Mob, right? That was probably the last quote unquote group that was like combining the whole, energy of street knowledge. It wasn't called gangster rap. It was street knowledge. They was kicking street knowledge, right? So my Pan-African Moor brother, it was commonplace at that time to be able to share books by Ivan Van Sertima, and you get what I'm saying? Dr. John Henry Clark. It was common to do that, right? But then when the strength of street knowledge combined with revolutionaries, that's when they shut it down and they made the transition to stop investing, not just because black folks was picking up these books and wearing African medallions. They saw white children, white college students talking about, hey, you know what? I think my mom is a devil. White students were saying this.
Right.
My mom is a white supremacist racist, and I don't agree with her. And so they were picking up the books. I'll never forget the white students who wanted to join the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, on the college campus, because they were embracing the fact that their people were imperialists. Right. And so they were learning the history, learning the science, and they wanted to make a change. And so as soon, and this is no knock, this is just the reality, as soon as the investment changed, because when the private corporatization happened with the penitentiaries, and they began making the move to market the music to make sure that these penitentiaries made their money, and all this coincided, that's when you begin to see a strong flip in the defunding of anything considered conscious. The defunding took place, and you saw what began to happen: education, economics, entertainment, war. All these changes began happening in the 90s, going towards the 2000s. And the unfortunate reality is that even to this very day, the history of this is not taught, especially by those who lived it. Because when you can understand what you just lived and then witness the miseducation that goes on purposefully, then you're able to say to yourself and others, hey, y'all, we got to get together and we got to educate our young people and even educate the adults who live through it, because they don't know what happened and they live through it. Right. But those who do know what took place, we have to look at it and say, hey, this affected us holistically. And just as poison went out there and it penetrated several generations, all of us on this show right now and those who are watching this, we have the ability to become an antidote to those that we can influence and connect with, because what will allow them to get unlocked from this miseducation, this purposeful miseducation, and the purposeful myths and lies that's got poisoned onto us or passed on to us, so that we think the way we think, we act the way we act, because we've been developed in this way over these past several generations. So what you're saying, the reality is that we have an opportunity to do that, but they don't care about, miseducating their own people, because there's a particular goal in mind. So killing your own don't matter to those who, run this circus, so to speak. They don't care about that.
Right. Yeah, right. Brother. Yes, sir. Exactly. I see it today. I see how important we are as a melanated people to them, to the Caucasian. Right. I see how our creativity, like Kara once said, that hip hop is the most exported commodity coming out of America. Right? It's everywhere, but it came out of our mind. Like the minister stated one time, you just leave the black man alone and let him think and see how he builds out of that mind. Right? What are we come up with? all our creativity, which he knows this. So his job is to keep us in disarray. But
That's his job.
that's his job.
His job.
Yeah, he's doing what he's supposed to do. But the thing about it is do we know how valuable we are? How much power we have? Who we actually are? We living below our standards and our means. That's why when I see brothers such as yourself doing the work with the youth in the community, it has to be exposed to the general public to show that no, don't give up. You got people out there that's actually fighting, right? Because this is a unseen war.
It's a social, psychological war. I got a question for you, brother. Like, can you walk me through what it would be like if I had a son and he's like 10 years old and I brought him to your program? What does a day look like? You know, starting off the program, like how does it work?
Well, I would say much of our work, it depends upon the context. If we came to your son's school, for example, it'd be a little bit different than a summer program.
Okay.
Because you're in the construct of the school system. So a lot of times, just to give an example, if we're in a school, they want after school programs. Well, our programs are holistic. So that means there's going to be some nutrition involved. There's no flaming hot, no red 40, no yellow number 5. Because we understand not only as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, but as a man thinketh and he digests ideas, well, you are what you eat as well. And these days, the food has been weaponized. So we teach and educate on every level of spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical elevation. So that way, when they come in through the door, they understand. You may eat that at home. You may even eating that in the lunchroom, but you don't bring that in here. For the next 2 hours, if you're going to eat something, it's going to be something that we can teach you about, as well as something that you can taste and understand. This is the reason. This is the mathematics. This is the science. This is why we don't do this. Because if you don't give them the reasoning of why and the understanding of it and allow for them to experiment with it, then you can talk all day long, but you have to be practical. Talk about it, be about it. It's not just a slang or a slogan. It's a reality of how you develop young people and you give them practical application so then they can say to themselves whether or not they enjoyed it or they didn't, whether they got something from it or they didn't. You got to be able to give them practical. So when they come in, not only are they getting the opportunity to get that snack that's a nutritional snack, and understanding of nutrition and how it feeds the body and the brain and the blood, etc., and they begin to learn about themselves from a physiological perspective, but then they begin to get involved in activities that's geared to challenge them. Yes, we do fitness. Can't get around the fitness. You know, we can't just do emotional fitness and mental fitness and forget the physical fitness. So there's a lot of physical challenges that's geared to build them up, but also to encourage them that when they're not part of our program, you should make this part of your regimen, because at the minimum, it allows you to deal in a positive way with your stress, with your anger, with your anxiety. You know, a lot of young people are dealing with mental health issues right now. And of course, people want to always usher in drugs. But the body and the brain, if you work it correctly, it makes natural healing chemicals for you coming from the brain. Sometimes when you're feeling stressed out, try to do 15 push-ups and see how that affects you. See what happens when the endorphins, are triggered. See what happens when you get some natural dopamines instead of you having to do something externally in terms of taking something to digest. When you start doing certain things with the body, whether we talk about yoga, we talk about boxing, martial arts, whatever we talking about doing, that which is physical, it has benefit on many levels. But we want to first deal with the cognitive aspect and the emotional aspect, because from a scientific perspective, when we're able to affect the amygdala and the limbic system, and we're able to affect the nervous system, we're able to do those things and then tell young people, listen, think about how you felt coming in through the door. 30 minutes later, we just did these exercises. How do you feel now? We did these stress relief exercises and activities. How do you feel now? What's different? Because again, you want to be able to develop them, teach them, train them, educate them, so then they're empowered. That's what empowerment is all about. It's not about a silver bullet. It's about saying, hey, this part of what we're doing is a coaching aspect, but you just can't coach all day. This part may be considered mentoring, as they call it mentoring, but everything is not about mentoring. Some things is instruction, some things is training, some things is facilitating, some things are teaching. But there's many different aspects of it because we're looking for transformation. And transformation is not a silver bullet. So in the course of a 90-minute session, depending upon the curriculum of that particular school, they may get music therapy. They'll get some of the things that we'll go into, maybe a specialization, because everything that we do, there's a couple of specialty items that we always put in there, especially when young people have a certain interest. So some schools, we may have DJing as one of the specialties. We always have something, again, physical, so boxing and martial arts is always a mainstay. But depending upon the school, we use music, hip hop, pop culture, performance. We use those as tools. So that's always an aspect of it. However, the crux of it is, how do we get holistic human development into a regular process with them? So every time we get together, they're understanding how to resolve conflicts internally before it becomes external. So there's different parts of the curriculum that deals with that aspect because we want to develop self-leadership. For them to understand that self-leadership is key. Because before you do different things outwardly and externally, it's a great thing to start within yourself. Because, we have something in the lesson that we call R. Kellyitis. I know you all are probably familiar with R. Kelly, where he said, "My mind is telling me no."
Right.
But my body, you know what I mean? So it was like that whole idea of that cartoon or that animation playing out where you get the devil on one side and you on the other. And it seemed like the devil was always loud, you know what I mean? Smack the hoe, take the money. You know what I mean? The devil was loud. You know what I mean? But then the angels all soft. Don't do that. Be fair. Be nice. So it seemed like the negative always got all the power, all the strength, all the bravado, and then it seemed like the positive is always meek and not strong. That's a misnomer. We really want young people to recognize that there's power in being a peacemaker.
Right.
I didn't say peace, be a peacemaker. That means we got to bridge some gaps. You know what I mean? We got to do some resetting in the environment, and that requires some strength. So we got to find ways to bridge those gaps so then they can understand. So I'm kind of playing out just a little bit that when we engage young people, everything is customized to fit the age, to fit the need. Unfortunately right now, and I'm not saying unfortunately in terms of us doing it, I'm saying unfortunately that we've had not only requests, but there's been a tremendous amount of young people affected by pedophiles that are going on to a lot of these platforms, whether it's social media platforms, the different games that are online where you get older people that are posing as either preteens or teens. They go on Fortnite, they go on Roblox, they go on the different, platforms, and they basically either sextort or, do different things to get young people involved in basically sharing things about themselves that shouldn't be shared, and then they threaten them, with exposure to their family, their friends, and everything, unless they do certain things. Whether you're talking about, some of these crazy people, they want them to videotape themselves cutting, and if they don't do it and make it real, they'll expose what, was sent to them previously. They even have a manual that these sick people put out. I think this organization is a satanic group the FBI identified. I want to say it's like the 167 organization, whatever. But basically, there's this network that have a manual that actually groom. They teach how to groom online and how to target certain age ranges. And so this is a network of sick people that do this. And so we've been having more, unfortunately, more schools and more organizations that's been asking about digital safety, how to get young people to recognize predators and what to do. And again, we're talking about third grade on up. So the reality is that we have to, on one hand, customize what we do per institution, but then also there are certain things across the board. I don't care if it's a top school where a lot of their high school students, for example, they're graduating, they're going to college, and a lot of people forget that they still have to live in a world that promotes Percocets, it promotes Zans, it promotes all types of sexual promiscuity, it promotes all types of behaviors. You have to still help young people to recognize self-worth, self-love, self-respect, and understanding their value so nobody can try to diminish their value and thus pressure them to engage in activities that's self-destructive. So if you got to do that with those that are part of magnet schools and these schools that people are always applauding because they have high graduation rates, then that means that those who are not on that level, they're getting hit just as much. So across the board, we have to provide programming that allows young people to recognize their value, while at the same time, a lot of the schools we have to reorientate young people when it comes to being a student, because a lot of times, as a teacher, they'll let you know they may have 2 students in the classroom out of 30 because the other 28 they didn't come to school to learn. And that's not the reason they there. They come to kick it. It's time to socialize. You know what I mean? And depending upon what age, they may come there for business. They coming to make some money. You got somebody selling a little, selling some gummies, selling some weed. Some might be selling some candy. You know what I mean? They there for business purposes. So you got different reasons why they come to school. So a lot of times we wind up having to reorientate young people to what the real purpose of an education is, not an indoctrination, but an education. And we challenge them. You have to force sometimes those who may be in front of you to educate you. So you got to be willing to ask questions so you can get answers. So then you can do not only the school work to get an A, but you want to do work on yourself because you're not just studying mathematics, you are mathematics.
Right.
Just studying chemistry, you are chemistry. You're not just studying history, you are history. So we have to do a lot sometimes to reorientate young people so then they'll look at their experience in school from a more empowered position and not from a position of I'm just here, man. I'm just trying to get through this thing. You know what I'm saying? And it's very passive, which means that there's not a lot of stick-to-itiveness when it comes to dealing with problems, conflicts, and issues. So they like Marshawn Lynch. You know what I mean? I'm just here so I won't get fined.
Right.
Well,
But
I'm here.
I know it says that our people suffer from a lack of knowledge, right?
Yes,
but
sir.
it's our people suffer from a lack of love of self.
Yes, sir.
Right. And I see that the programs that you setting up is teaching them love of self. And once you have that love of self, it can spread to your parents, or because you saying, no, I love me. I don't want to put that in my body. I love me. I don't want to go over there. I love me enough to now. I don't want to. You meaning you can recognize when someone's trying to deceive you and give you some poison because you love yourself enough to where you don't want to take the poison.
Right.
Yes,
And that's the key. Teaching love of self. Love yourself. Love yourself. And as it expounds, and so many people raises the percentages of those who love themselves, then the hell the enemy you can't conquer love of somebody who loves themselves because it ain't nothing you can do to me. I'm not afraid. I'ma love myself and whatever happens, but you don't have the power over me.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't love yourself, anybody can come in there with any kind of suggestions and thoughts and, hey, let's do this, or hey, or look, if we go through this when we're younger, right? An older person that may have got in a gang or may have got with a jacking crew or whatnot, misery loves company. they looking for somebody that's vulnerable who they can bring in.
Mm-hmm.
So they can share that same experience of how they messed their life up. They don't want to be left alone, but you come over here, let me mess your life up too.
Mm.
And they keep that same pattern going with this false sense of love.
You know what? And even if you don't know it's poison, you know, when you have love of self, it will allow for you to get over the need for validation, recognition, and approval of others. So then you at minimum can ask the question, if I do this, what is this gonna do to me? You know, people talking about shrooms and taking some shrooms or mushrooms, whatever. It's like, okay, I'm not up on mushrooms. You talking about the mushrooms you eat, you know what I mean, on your burger or some food, or it's a vegan meal or a vegetarian meal to go with your rice. You're not talking about that. You're talking about a psychedelic drug. Well, if I love myself, even if I don't know about mushrooms, I'm gonna ask the question, hey man, what is the mushroom? What does it do to you? I'm going to ask a question because once I get the answer, I can let you know whether or not I'm going to go the distance with you and what you're talking about.
Right.
But if I'm so caught up in your validation or approval of me, and for you to recognize me in a certain kind of way, I'm not going to ask that question because I really want to belong with this crew. You know, that's the reason why I went to jail for the first time at the age of 15 because I left home at 14. You know, 'cause I want to be grown. I want to do what everybody else doing.
Right.
When I went to jail at the age of 15, it was because I was making choices based upon that idea or that sense of belonging. And so because one person is doing this, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it with you. I'm gonna be down with that. So that's part of the journey of many young people. You know, you got to learn how to love you enough to know that if your first mind is telling you, no, don't do that, trust that your first mind is probably the right mind. It's that mind in you, as we say, the self accusing spirit is guiding you to go the right way, even though somebody else may be telling you, well, no, go with me because, you know, it's the cool way. You don't want to be no lame.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it. I see it all the time. I like the fact that when you instill that knowledge in the youth, you don't have to worry about later on in life, if you're fortunate, not to become that old dude, 60 years old and plus, who never got it in life, and now going pillar to post trying to hold on to life or find somewhere to go or build and whatnot. I mean, it's even for sisters as well. That's a horrible sight because you only got so much. It's like periods of time. You learn this lesson in this period of time, so you can be developed at this period in time, so you can make yourself secure within your living standards, your financial standards at this period in time. And when you get in your elderly years, you should have a place where you're comfortable, and now you resting on whatever savings or retirement you had or whatever that you can build for your grandchildren and their children and next generations and keep knowledge and money flowing. You're building land. We have to see ourselves as business people, landowners. I mean, the whole scope of making money,
Right.
the scope of, like you stated, nutrition as far as feeding within your family. Meaning, we have to be the overall picture for ourselves because we can't look to nobody else to do for us what we can do for ourselves. It's impossible, bro. It's you can't do it.
I
It's
want to commend you on that, brother. I want to commend you on the program. That's very powerful to have that going on because the different dynamics with the youngsters. I don't know what's the ratio with male and female, but a question I was coming up was I was thinking in my mind while we were talking. I was, like I know a lot of young people are get kind of pressured into gangs based on neighborhoods, and you know, you don't even necessarily have to be participating in gang activity. You just automatically, because you live on this side of town, or this area, you automatically associated with it all your little friends and stuff like that. So, like with your program, is it hard to kind of instill these values that you're instilling in them, and then watch them go home, or just an environment that they're in be affected? Do you find yourself have to like keep having a reset with the youth?
It depends upon frequency, how
Right.
often and how long we're able to work with, young people. I think, we've been blessed to be able to say, we've had an 8-week program where it was 5, 6 days a week. One of the first summers that we did a program, and that program, because of the intensity, we look back at the results of that, and we know that the results of that are what they are because we were able to be with them, from 10 a.m. to 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, and then something. Then for 4 or 5 weeks, we did Saturday sessions because we had an entrepreneurship component. So they were demonstrating what they were learning in the entrepreneurship component, and that was a stipend, that they were able to generate based upon entrepreneurial practices. So the reality is that when you have school systems that only dedicate 1 hour a week to something like this, 2 hours a week, then you get the results of that. And it's unfortunate. And I'm not saying the results are not good, but what I am saying is that in the school setting or in juvenile detention centers, whatever you invest in, it's like an old saying, you get out what you put in. So if you have 40 hours of opportunity, but you're only putting in 2 hours for spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical elevation, empowerment, instruction, and then you give them a whole bunch of other things, you wonder why they're not doing well. You can, we have people, when we do programs that are holistic, we can bring in, we have a chapter of the Chicago chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen. They'll come in and we have them teaching the young people how to pilot drones, for example. And if they're 16 years of age or older, they're able to get their license to be drone pilots. There's different industries that really are looking for those who can operate drones effectively and do the videography and everything with it. However, if you don't teach these young people the keys to success and allow for them to practice the demonstration of these keys,
Right.
the value of your attitude or your orientation or tendency of thinking and how that affects you and how you deal with other people and you deal with the environment, the value of being cooperative in these environments, whoever it is that's instructing you about whatever, knowing that your ability to cooperate with them allows for you to learn those things that you either claim you want to learn or those things you may need to learn to pass on to the next grade. Understanding the value of attendance and punctuality and how that affects your ability to grasp the knowledge that you're saying you're there for, so then you can perform what it is that you know. Those are the keys to success. And I'm just showing an example of how when you're able to have the duration and the frequency of time with young people, and it's a rich experience where there's practical application going on.
Right.
Understanding and the meaning of what you're doing is being demonstrated. So it's not a whole bunch of just talking in theory, it's practical application. It makes for a very penetrating experience, but it becomes really lessened when you're in certain environments where, a lot of institutions, especially schools, they're so focused on test scores that they put so much time to taking a test and they don't realize that the young people, they're not doing well in the test called life. And so if you want to help young people navigate away from incarceration in the early grade or making choices that make them parents prematurely or they're dealing with different issues that they shouldn't have to deal with, then you have to be able to give them what they need so then they can reach some of those milestones or those goals that you set forward to them in these different institutions. So, that's the honest reality of it. So we just try to find different ways that we can go beyond the norm. So sometimes we'll have to mix it up. And a lot of times that's our goal anyway, that if we can connect with the parent and the student, it allows for both to understand what's going on in these programs. So then it becomes a language they understand, principles and practices that can be utilized. And it goes the same with the teachers or the professionals. That's the ideal situation. However, sometimes we don't have that, so we just do the best that we can. And the goal is to follow up and follow through with them, so you don't just get them started on the road and then you leave them.
Right. Right. Exactly. Sister Pebbles, welcome, Sister Pebbles. Brother Enoch, Sister Pebbles on the show. This is another,
How you doing,
able scientist, that deals on these subjects and topics.
I can't hear her. She was speaking. I can hear her.
Pebbles, can you hear me? Okay, let me get her going.
Oh, she said it was her.
Okay, got you. But she here though. Okay, I think she was saying that for some reason they wasn't picking up her mic, but she's here to bear witness.
Okay,
and we'll catch that on the next time. But as we close, wait, Pan African Moors, anything you want to add or say on this topic?
I mean, hey, I'm just taking in the knowledge, just learn it, I think everything, y'all saying is on point, man. I mean, I mean, I don't know if it's that much to add. I mean, y'all, unless it's something you wanted me to comment on specifically. I mean, but overall, great information.
Right. Well, yes, because everything embodies everything. Because we are a multifaceted people coming from different areas around the globe. Because when I'm talking about melanated people, I'm talking about the Caribbeans, I'm talking about Africa, I'm talking about Brazil, I'm talking about Jamaica, talking about America, because the same problem that it faces people in other diasporas around this globe. It's not just in America. So hopefully they can utilize this knowledge, right? And add it to their prospective places where they reside on this planet, right? Because the knowledge was for everybody, although it was formulated right here in the West, and now it shines from the West to the East, right? So by being, let's say, we say sovereign as a Moor, and I know Brother Enoch knows this subject as well. How can the Moor, right, utilize the knowledge as far as the context of being sovereign, the importance of that to enhance more love of themselves, right? To help weed out the colonizers or Willie Lynch mindset that was embedded in them, right? So we still, like 2026, we should not be fighting to get Willie Lynch off of us, and we shouldn't be fighting to get that nigga out of our system. It should be dead by now. Right. So how can we utilize the context and the knowledge of the Moors to help in this process?
Well, you said sovereignty. So sovereignty as something that is key when it comes to the Moors and, the culture of the Moors is that you always think first, how can we handle this ourselves? So whenever you hear about crime in these different cities, you always hear people, well, the police this, the police that. But you don't hardly ever hear anybody say, well, what about, the Jewish neighborhoods where they have their own, private security companies, and, we don't talk about private militaries, and we don't make that a part of our culture where we always think about us first, as far as us having our own cities, our own jurisdiction, our own courts. We always talk about the Beadine courts that, the Jewish community has, with us coming in the name of peace, we call Islam. Islam is peace, salam. It's not because the Moors, even though they are, typically associated with Islam, the Moors in America are very diverse when it comes to what they deal with spiritually. But we also understand that the Moors of antiquity utilized Islam as a tool for organizing large bodies of people. So, we we're doing the same thing, and that's what we're teaching. So sovereignty, and what can people take from the Moors is sovereignty. Make sovereignty your go-to when it comes to everything that you do. So that means entrepreneurship. That means owning your own, having your own, thinking internationally, and not just locally, understanding that you have to have international allies in order to have real power, and looking at things from not the perspective of just being some citizen that's under the jurisdiction of a foreign entity, but looking at it from the perspective of, if you were in a leadership position and you were in a position to where, you had some kind of input when it comes to how your body politic is going to move forward progressively, then, that is the kind of mindset that Moors, teach. And because, I had these conversations all the time, is that, me studying what's going on internationally, just Burkina Faso, for example, Mali and Niger, is that when you look at the way that they deal with international politics, and they have ambassadors come from all these different countries and, meet up with them, and they're brokering all these deals with these different countries. That's, when I hear people here talk about all this tribalism and all this infighting and gang banging, it's so remedial and it's so low level, when we have examples of people who look exactly like us, that they understand that in order to really have power, that you have to be diplomatic. Sometimes countries that don't even get along with each other, they're able to come to the table and at least try to work it out, even if they got to go back to their respective countries and still go to war. Now, I know it's some things going on right now with, Trump and Venezuela. This, these kind of situations, in order to even uh, speak about it on a level to where we can have any real influence, you got to first speak from the perspective of sovereignty and having international allies through trade, business, and commonality. So that's what one of the key things people can take from the Moors.
Now as we close, and also on more perspective, and not just us in general, lawyers, Moors that can teach the law to the youth, because sometimes they make mistakes and didn't know they make a mistake because they passing these new laws every day.
Every day.
And people getting caught up, and look, they're not gonna take the fact that you didn't know as an excuse, because they need that money off of you. Stop letting them win off of us. And then we going back to our original, the mindset and what brother is doing, hip hop detox within the school system will avoid families who can't come up with $500 to free a sister and had her in there for 3 days, and you can't gather up $500.
Wow.
I don't make no sense, right? Be wild. What do we say? Big fields of weight. It's so much. Brother even got in this program dealing with digital awareness, in a sense. That's including AI. Get them in there. I mean, flying drones. I mean, because for the youth that's listening, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to be the mind of the elderly, and set the course for the future. I don't know if and also teach. You're gonna have to be to teach the parents in today's time, because technology is moving so fast. The love that has to be taught to the youth has to spread to the parent, so they can understand the importance. Let me give you an example. vehicles. You don't put no bad gas in your car because you don't want it to break down and you spending more money. Same as with your children. Don't put bad food into the children's body, which will warp the mind and have them doing certain things or not being able to keep up within school because I'm understanding, like Brother stated earlier, a lot of it deals with diet. A lot deals with goes in your body. A lot. And you can tell though, I'm serious. You can tell those who eat healthy diets by looking at them. And you can tell those who eat bad diets by looking at them. You can tell. You can see that glow and that shine within a person. And then you can also see the glow that's not there, you know. And we had a point to where, okay, yeah, we used to say, I don't want to say nothing because so-and-so mama going to be yelling at me. I don't want this fight. You know, I don't want to really get involved. But now you got to get involved. Those days are gone. We got to because we have children. And we want our sons and daughters to marry on to someone with knowledge or like mine. You know, everybody can't be locked up in jail. You know what I mean? Everybody can't be terminology of on the other side. You know what I mean? Dude, come on, bro. We got to get this thing together because why? I know it hurts me to see the enemy laughing because he know I know, and he know he knows, and and he knows he can't stop it. What he say? What he tell the messenger? Getting your people to understand or gain this knowledge is like putting pants on the elephant.
Yeah.
You know, that's telling us, man, getting your people. They laugh, man, getting your people to outthink us. Basically, it's like trying to put pants on the elephant. And when he only got what a third of knowledge, he ain't got that. It's just, and we wrestling with something. We being fooled by the same old trick in 2026. Look, that's a rhyme. I could have put that on paper. Anyway, we getting fooled by the same old trick in 2026, and it just don't make sense as well. You know, and then a lot of, but I gotta say this, a lot of people know whether it's rap or R&B, they know, but they win and out. Yeah, man, but I get paid doing this though. You know what I mean? But you saying you can't come up with another way to get paid? I'm telling you. And before I gotta say this anyway. Check it out. So you got AI, right? You got animation. What if? And this is a question for you guys. What do y'all think if we take okay, put it like this. You know how we took our lower nature and we created a whole nother race so we can see what sin they like in the flesh? What if we take that same thing and create an AI or animation and have them gang bang like GTA and do it on the screen? And then pull it public. And then just do it if you because I hear people and those of you who have knowledge on games, but I hear people say that they do it for the love, they love the culture. They love all of that. They like it. So can you take that and do it in animation like GTA, make it a video game or something to get that, if you got to get that out of you, that type of expression. Is that possible? Can it be done? Question two.
That was a question to everybody.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I don't think nothing is impossible. All it takes is the will and the skill, and us to come together to produce what's necessary. So no, I don't think it's impossible.
Right. Because is there a need now for gang banging since it's been going on for generations? We know that DNA, the genetic code carries memory. And the reason that's why I said that. What if you have to do it and you do it in a way to this game has this animation or computer screen with this one, and they fight on the computer.
Well, let me just say this. Those who are familiar with the history of our street tribes, and my brother here in Chicago, Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. He calls them unpoliticized street tribes. And so these street tribes, or nations, if you will, whether it's Crips, Bloods, GD, Stone, Vice Lords, whatever branch that they may come from, if they are part of those who came out of the 60s, the design wasn't for them to become predators and destroyers of their neighborhood and their community. That wasn't the initial start. So for those who have never read the COINTELPRO FBI files, a white organization called the Weathermen, they call it liberating. They liberated the files out of the FBI office. However, whether you want to say liberating, they stole it, whatever they did, they got the goods out of the FBI in the 70s to show what it was that they were doing to black, white, brown, and other organizations to let people know what was really going on. And the reality is that when you have letters being written by those who were part of the FBI and other agencies posing as Black Panthers, going against the Blackstone Rangers and talking about how they don't like one another, or how the FBI bragged about how they fermented and developed the rift between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, and that was considered a successful FBI COINTELPRO operation. All the things that you begin to read about, you begin to see how sometimes there were more agents in the Panther Party than there were Panthers in certain meetings. So it's an unfortunate reality that we have a lot of issues within and amongst ourselves that get exploited. And until we do the self-work, the self-empowerment work, the self-liberating work, the self-improvement work, until we do that, it's a great work. It's a lot of need. And so we need more adults and more young people, more young adults to be connected with it. So then we can go ahead and utilize the curriculum and the pedagogy and the methodology and understand that this is something that evolves and grows. It's not stagnant or static. It's really dynamic. And so when we say hip hop, a lot of people think we're talking about what the music industry has put out there as hip hop. But we don't define hip hop like that. We define hip hop as being truth without boundaries. And the detox is to remove the poison. At the root of all poisons are lies, half-truths, and myths. Yeah. So we look forward to collaborating and partnering in any city. So we love to come to Tulsa, whether we're inside the high schools, elementary schools, colleges, or if there's organizations and they want to get a chapter of Hip Hop Detox and get licensed. We want to do that kind of work because we know that it's necessary.
Yes, man. I'm on your website right now. I'm checking it out. I'm definitely going to get in touch with you so we could actually set some stuff up.
Yeah. Now, what about the footage from Chirac and from Chicago to Iraq and putting that together? I know we're gonna work that project.
Oh yeah, I had a older brother. I was talking to a brother. I don't know how many of you all ever seen the movie The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Yeah, I seen it.
Yeah, so you know that the character named Shorty, the one with the afro, in the movie, he was a drug dealer that got shot that kicked off, everything towards the middle and the end of the movie.
Right.
His name, he's an actor, director, and he's a legendary filmmaker named Pomone Rami. And so I was just at Let's Eat to Live restaurant here in Chicago on the South Side, right down from what they call O Block, which, I grew up knowing as Parkway Gardens off 67th and Champlain. But we was there eating and having a discussion about film festivals and some of the things that he's doing with the film festival. So he saw some of that at first episode of Chirac to Iraq and back. And so we were just discussing how we really want to be able to allow the people to see the docu-series because we were blessed to be invited to go to the country of Iraq back in 2017. There was a conference for free thinking artists and activists. And so Hip Hop Detox was invited, so I invited some of the artists that we work with here in Chicago. One brother came out of New York. Well, he was in Florida, but he's from Rockaway, New York. And so we spent 10 days in the country of Iraq during the time of this pilgrimage that's called the Abarim pilgrimage, where it's the largest gathering in the world. Like over 22 million people on average come to this particular pilgrimage. And it's in honor of the martyred grandson of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And so I had never heard of this pilgrimage. And this pilgrimage was actually banned during the time of the Iraq-Iran wars. And so once they stopped being at war with each other, the borders opened back up, and then that whole pilgrimage was safe to go on. And so we had a chance to experience it. And so the whole idea of people from other countries going online, seeing the drive-by shooting, seeing the shooting and the killing and everything, and they were able to examine and present, man, this is what the internet is saying about Chicago, and why people from Chicago start calling the city Chirac. And so our whole goal was to detox that whole thing, because I don't call Chicago Chirac. I call it Chi City or Chicago. But I understand why people named it Chirac, because they saw the escalation of murders going up in Chicago. And the reality is that when I was coming up in high school, Chicago experienced more murders then than we're experiencing now. Not to say that one murder is good. However, we were having 7, 8, 900 murders in the city of Chicago every year. The pinnacle year was in 1993, where there was 940 murders in the city of Chicago, according to the FBI statistics. And the last year that it was in the 900s that was recorded was in 1974, when it was 970 murders. So after the October 16th, 1995 Million Man March, that's when the murder rate in Chicago and all over the country in every major city began to decline. And that decline continued for like 12, 13, 14 years. And so we began seeing a spike, 2013, 2012, and it began to spike compared to where it was. I think Chicago went all the way down to maybe 400, I think, murders. Again, this is a city that was consistently having 6, 7, 800, homicides per year. So to go down to the 400s, that was a positive trend. And unfortunately, a lot of people weren't aware of it. They didn't understand how it took place or what triggered it. And most importantly, how we should maintain it. And that's why, knowing your history is so important, because there's no other study that will reward the researcher other than the researching of our history. Because when you can understand your history and your herstory and embrace it to understand what was and what is, then it allows for you to move with the power of that history and that herstory to make real change in the present tense, so then the future can be better. And so I think we are those that are in that vanguard position, those of us that, again, are present on this communication, and those who watch it, and those who actually understand and care, that if you communicate with the young people and those who are a little bit older, they'll see, as you said, Brother Vince, that all hope is not lost, that we are redeemable, we are retrievable. And unfortunately, sometimes you get so disappointed and frustrated, you think that all hope is lost, and that we are irretrievable, we are irredeemable. So why even try? Why even pray for us? Because we're so lost. And so it could become like that due to our frustrations and our disappointments. However, having these kind of platforms and putting this out here can help people to be reminded that no, all hope is not lost. Many of us are on the case. Many of us are working. And as long as we continue to lift each other up and elevate and work with each other, because again, one person, one group, one organization, we can't do this alone. We really need the help of everybody to be on deck to embrace the type of work that we got to do to uplift ourselves and our people.
Brother, that was well said. We really appreciate you for coming on the show and the work you're doing with our future. which is you. We need it. I mean, and like you said, every older person should think that work, because that's one less young person you got to worry about hitting you in the head trying to take your wallet purse.
Indeed.
So we need that work, and we need to put our finances to back
Another
such work.
march.
Yes.
We need another Million Man March.
Come on, sister. Come on, Sister
Keep
Rock.
saying it.
Come on.
And if people would just give, even every man, if they just donated, let's say $5, you know the impact that would make. That would allow for, see, it really needs to be the Million Man March Plus. And if every man and young man can donate $5, you imagine that can fund the infrastructure.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And it can very well happen.
Yeah. And even if tour different cities.
Yeah, but guess what? It'll be a great time probably like now. Everybody
Well,
just stay to themselves and stay out of everybody else's way. Even if they did it on the, you know, I know it's kind of hot outside right now. It is. It's really hot. But I guess we would have to move through like the monks moved through. They just went about their business.
Oh, on that one, yes, indeed, they did. That's right. That's right.
well, I'll put the challenge out there to you that, since thought precedes the action, and the way that the Million Man March was developed, it didn't start with someone communicating to the media what they were going to do. It started off with people that were just doing the work and not letting the media know a damn thing. And so
Right.
the
We talk
media,
about that all the time.
yeah,
Like, just to and be quiet.
yeah, just do the work, because
Right.
every when you start talking about conception of life, man, you don't have light in that womb when that sperm meets the egg cell. It's just an explosion in the darkness, and that baby starts to develop without my mama even knowing necessarily. And I think that when people recognize the history of a lot of our movements, but particularly the Million Man March, it was preceded by a Stop the Killing tour that happened throughout America. It was preceded by men-only meetings that happened. So you had some years of activity going on that seeded the ground, that made it very fertile for a Million Man March to take place. So now we just need more of us to fertilize the ground, working together with each other underground, so to speak, where you, my Pan-African Moor brother OG, we're working together in a variety of ways, doing what we do, whether we do it in Tulsa, we do it in Houston, do it in Chicago, we do it in St. Louis, we do it in Baltimore, DC, but we doing it recognizing that the unity that we have, that's the fertile soil that we keep growing and we keep developing, because when we get to that next stage, that critical mass, as it's called, it'll allow for us to actualize whatever we envision. And we got to first do that kind of work, so that way we build up that infrastructure that's necessary. So we may not get a million, brothers to say, hey, I'll put $5 on it, but we can start off with 100, you know what I mean? 1,000. That'll help to build it up. And just to give you this, my sister, I was asked probably about 4 months ago, after we did for the 30-year anniversary of the Million Man March here in Chicago. We were blessed to bring over 1,000 teenagers to Chicago State University for the Males to Men Empowerment Seminar. It was our 3rd annual seminar, and we had over 100 plus men to participate in that. And so the sister who called for the Million Woman March out of Philadelphia, I was on a call with her, and so she asked me to be part of her cabinet to put on the 30-year anniversary of the Million Woman March, which is to take place in Philadelphia in the year 2027. So,
Okay.
so I think that with those different things happening, I think that the Most High is going to bless us to make some powerful things take place that will lead up to some of the things that we're envisioning. So I'll just put it like this. My number is 773-563-4315. That's the hotline number. And my email is brotherenoch@hiphopdetox.org, and that's detox with 2 X's. I'm not hard to find. We just got to find each other and keep each other going, because the reality is that over these next 36 months, I think we're going to see some things that either we didn't expect. We may have thought about it happening, but we're going to see some very interesting things. But I care more about what we do, because it's not about what they do. It's about what we do, and even so much as how we respond to the things that happen and not react to it.
Well said. Bro Creek Radio with our guest, Brother Enoch Muhammad, Hip Hop Detox, who is connected to a lot of influential people within the industry, outside the industry, that we can utilize his gifts, skills, and talent to build. And he also uses his gifts, skills, and talent to build. So let's continue to work. Anybody would like to add anything?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
Brother Enoch, are you familiar with the movement, which when I first seen it, it started with King Yella, who is a GD, and he was doing a music video, and he was pushing peace, and he ended up getting shot. And then later on down the line, FYBJ Maine picked it up. He did. Lil Durk brought him before he got incarcerated. He brought him on stage, and they had victims of violence, gang violence that happened in Chicago. They put it up on the brick screen from both the GDs and the BDs. And what is your just curious? What's your thoughts on the pushing peace that's going on with some of the BDs in O Block, especially the Muslim brothers in O Block, and FYBJ Maine, King Yella, Tay Savage, Tay 600. Are you familiar with the pushing piece that they got going on, and what's your thoughts on it?
Well, brother, if I would have known you to ask that question, I'd have brought my hoodie out, which is the Unity hoodie that Golden Child and the Unity movement and all those persons that you named are connected to and part of. And then those who may not be part of pushing peace of that particular part of the movement, there's quite a few people that are part of. So I'm very aware of the movements to push peace and to be in the trenches doing that kind of work. I'm always not only supportive of those kind of movements, I pray for the consistency and the continuity of it, especially when you got a lot of young brothers who may look for leadership positions and begin butting heads because they want to be the quote unquote, they want to be him, even in that movement. And so I like it when you have those who recognize each other and they stay focused on the goal. Stay focused on the main goal. You want to push peace and you want to push unity, but you recognize that you got adversaries all around and within that they don't want peace. They don't want unity. And like I said before, I grew up in an area that they call O Block. When I grew up, it was called Parkway Gardens. There's a school called John Foster Dulles that's right there where O Block is. I went to that elementary school, and I used to live right across the street from O Block, and I played in, what they call O Block growing up as a child. So I'm very familiar with the area. And all those, whether they're the Muslim brothers, and, we had Hebrew brothers that came through, and, different people for different reasons coming into that area because of the high profile nature of it. I think that, those who have intentions to really help, I pray that they are successful in doing it and being genuine, because I know a lot of people, sometimes they get tired of people coming into that area and they just come in for the photo op. They just there to try to get some likes and get some notoriety, but they're really not about doing the work that's needed. So, so I'm all about, those who have a desire to do the work. Hey, there's so much work that needs to be done. I would never say, or turn down the help. I think that again, the ones that I'm very familiar with that's been doing it. I know Lil Durk's father, Big Durk. Him and I worked at this a violence intervention organization called Chicago Cred in Chicago, and Arnie Duncan, who's a former Department of Education person under President Barack Obama, he runs Chicago Cred. So I spent probably 2-3 years doing detox empowerment sessions with the brothers who either just came out the pen or they are identified as shooters, and we're working to empower them and give them the skill sets to be able to deal with their social emotional issues and their traumas. So being part of that work, I think any unity movement, member, whether they part of hip hop or whether they just on the street as an activist, I just encourage them to stay focused on the prize and to understand the history of our adversaries, because we know that there's agents and people that are amongst them that don't mean good for the organization or for the work. They're just trying to find a way to put division in a unity and put animosity between them. And that's the unfortunate reality of what we're dealing with, is that you got a lot of young people who are not familiar with that history. And so some of the artists that have been killed, I'm not totally sure if they even know who really killed those artists. I've been part of group settings and having discussions, and a block would get shot up, and we would find out through the course of the conversation. The news would put out there that some police got shot at one night, and they arrested those guys, but those guys would come back and say, "Hey, that same car came 2 days prior, and they shot up the block, killing so and so." So how were we to know that that car had police in it? And we've seen it where vehicles that would be unmarked vehicles would be driving around, and then they'll pull the window down, and you'll see law enforcement, not in uniform. They have on their, bulletproof vest, whatever. You will see that, and so that's what makes it so such a strained relationship, not only with the police, but it's a strained relationship with those on the block, because you don't really know if they your ops for real or not. You thinking they shot up your block, and it could be somebody else that shot up the block, because we're not organized the way that we need to be. So I encourage those who push peace and they sincere about it. So shout out to all those who push peace, from those who I'm familiar with that work with Golden Child and the different social media influencers that actually are involved in that work. Again, this is a protracted struggle. So Kwame Ture, he picked up the banner saying that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad called for unity. He's been calling for unity amongst Black people to form a united front going back into the 30s and 40s. And so we're close to 2030 right now. So we've been asking, fighting, preaching and pleading for us to have a united front for a long time. So I continue to echo, let's make it real, because all of us, we got one life to live. And when it's our time to go and we expire, we would hope that there'll be other persons that would embody that spirit of unity. So.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We'll see it. We'll see it.
Well, so that's the purpose of this. That is why we do what we, we do this, and it's not even about us. It's about utilizing our gifts and talent to help, to see change that we'd like to see. Put the work in, in the effort, so we can see, because we know we wouldn't be wasting our time if we didn't know it wasn't possible.
Mm-hmm.
We all had tasks that we wanted completed, and when we went into it, we thought it was going to be easy. But as time progressed, we realized, man, we got to roll up our sleeves and do this work. So, hey, that is what it is. But thank you again, brother. We are out until next time. Yeah. Sure. Oh, hold on, brother. Got the shirt. There you go, right there. There you go.
Yeah, the Unity hoodies, and then on the back, We all we got.
We all we got.
Nice.
We got. So I don't mind representing, our brothers and supporting the efforts because we all a link on the chain. So man, salute to all those, man, that's out there in every city that's engaging in this warfare. Because it is warfare and it ain't fair. But that's how we go. We gonna overcome that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, peace and love.
Peace and love, God. We are
Peace,
all
peace.
peace, God. Yes, sir.
Peace, God.
Peace.
Fix this right now.